So, hello everybody. Welcome to our sixth ELT webinar. This time it's a special ELT webinar as we are going to have it together with EcoCampus from Belgium. And this webinar will be on the theory and practice of sustainability in academic research. And we have our specialist, Professor Thomas Bloch from Belgium here with us today as well. And I'm very much looking forward to co-moderate this session actually with Philip Carlson from EcoCampus Belgium, and directly hand over now to Philip for his introduction. Please, Philip.
Okay, thank you, Clemens, and thank you to the Copernicus Alliance for the opportunity to cooperate on this webinar. I am working for the Department of Environment, Nature and Energy of the Flemish government in Belgium. And more specifically, together with my colleagues, I am part of the EcoCampus program. This program is focused on sustainable higher education. Now, our aim at EcoCampus is to fully integrate the concept of sustainability in the higher education system, meaning in its education, its research, and also its societal service. We therefore target teachers, students, researchers, educational leaders and policymakers alike. We do this broadly in three ways, such that teachers, students and researchers experiment with sustainability issues, build a capacity for sustainability, and are empowered by an enabling environment in higher education for sustainable development. Now, sustainability in higher education is definitely a growing field of reflection and practice. Yet integrating sustainability in research is still a challenge. So we call for a profound debate on the role of research within sustainable higher education. To talk about this a bit more, we have Professor Thomas Bloch with us today. Thomas Bloch is a social scientist. He is the head of the Center for Sustainable Development at Ghent University in Belgium. And this Center for Sustainable Development is a multidisciplinary research group which focuses on all aspects of sustainability transitions. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our audience to this webinar on the theory and practice of sustainability in academic research with Professor Thomas Bloch. Now, the first question we would like to ask is, do we need an agreed upon definition of the concept of sustainability to perform sustainability research?
Okay, well, thank you for organizing this, but I think the first question is a good question, and I can give a quite elaborated answer on that. So I think first we have to be aware and acknowledge that sustainability is a contested concept. The diversity of actors engaging with sustainability, that gives rise to a lot of different interpretation, ranging from, quite in a typical way, from weak sustainability approaches to strong sustainability interpretations. And yeah, in my opinion, an example of weak sustainability approach is the popular three-pillar model. So the model of people, planet, profit, or prosperity, it depends, prosperity. And this triangle model strives for a balance between social, ecological, and economic concerns or challenges. And I think from a theoretical point of view, I do understand this model, but I think the practical implementation mostly gets stuck in technological optimism and in quite overrated trickle-down theory. So first we notice a technological fix, so a strong belief in technological solutions for environmental problems, also other problems, for instance, the shortage of raw materials. And at the same time, we see a belief in economic growth as the overall solution for almost everything. So it seems a dogma, a really important goal in itself. So proponents really believe in the trickle-down idea. Then growth will bring welfare and economic benefits, not only for the rich, of course, first for the rich, but also for the poorer people, because they believe at the end that welfare will trickle down to the lowest parts, the poorest people of our society. And I think such thinking is often reflected in the debate on green economy and ecological modernization. But on the other side, we have proponents of strong sustainability, and I think I am one of them. So we question the existing political and economic power structures. So these structures are at the heart of our sustainability problems, and they are maybe responsible for these problems. There is maybe quite causal relation. So a real transformation seems necessary, and I think we can find such an approach within the ideas of, for instance, the environmental justice movement, or more recently in the degrowth movement, which leans against the academic field of ecological economics. And their stronger, their nested model, so instead of the triple P model, presuppose that economic activities, these are of course important, but not as a goal in itself. So economy must serve as a socially just society, and both. And I mean, the economy and the just society can only exist within the limits and carrying capacity of our planet. So within the planetary boundaries. So I know that I made now quite an typical differentiation between weak and strong sustainability, but so to make clear that it's difficult to pinpoint any exact definition of sustainability. But in reality, of course, we see a continuum ranging from, and I cite Hopwood here, from status quo approaches over reform approaches towards more radical transformation approaches. And all three are used within debates. So there are a lot of different interpretations in the debate and in the practices as well, so even more in practices. But this doesn't mean that we need another word or concept, nor does it mean that sustainability is just a relative concept, an umbrella concept that means everything and nothing at the same time. It's maybe just like concepts as freedom, democracy, justice. So a concept of sustainability must be seen as a decision guiding concept, and I think we can or must also consider it as a political concept and try to bring our idea or interpretation to the forefront within the debate. So there is often not one single clear-cut solution, and that's why it needs debates, a discussion, or even a struggle between discourses or strategies, and that's why sustainability issues are also political. And therefore, I will question weak sustainability or status quo approaches who focus just on economic benefits, or even worse, on the greenwashing. And yeah, and believe me, the struggle is hard and difficult.
Thank you so much. So I understand you just described that there are strong and weak sustainability challenges or models and approaches also, and at the same time we also find stronger or more complex sustainability challenges in a way. So do you think there are different types of sustainability problems, some of which are more complex than others? Does this demand also for different research perspective or approaches?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think, in my opinion, this question and my modest answer touches some major elements of sustainability thinking. It is important to distinguish several types of sustainability problems, and I like the scheme with two axes. It is used by, for instance, Hoppe, by Fintovic-Ravet, by Stacey as well, and one axis is the degree in which there is an agreement on value and norms concerning sustainability challenge. For example, what is the mobility system we really want? Do we want car-free zones in the heart of our cities? Is a private car still the central element in our future model? So answers to those questions are related to normative aspects. And the other axis is on the certainty of our scientific knowledge. And so is there a dispute between scientists of different disciplines or within disciplines on facts and on required knowledge? Is there a lot of uncertainty on the issue? And answers to those questions are more related to agreements on scientific facts. So imagine those two axes, because we can map several types of problems using these two axes, two characteristics. And when there is no dispute on certainty on facts and knowledge, and when there is an agreement on norms and values, then we can consider the problem as a structured problem. For instance, the hole in the ozone layer. Scientists knew quite well how to fix this hole. The reduction of CFCs seems a solution where all scientists agree on. And it fits also very well in our normative future vision. So in this context, our dominant way of thinking was very useful, but that's not always the case. And maybe it's now a good moment to stress the importance also of experts, of a monodisciplinary specialist approach. I don't want a misunderstanding on that point. We need them very much. But as said, often there is no right answer. There is no clear-cut solution for sustainability issues. And this is the case when there is a lack of agreement on norms and values, and at the same time when the uncertainty on facts and scientific knowledge is quite big, then we have to deal with what we call wicked issues. And we have to deal with complexity, with uncertainty, with multiple perspectives, stakes, multiple interests, values and norms. And I think issues such as climate change, genetic modification, loss of biodiversity, gentrification and so on, those issues prove difficult to solve. Then expert knowledge is incomplete, is fragmented or uncertain, and that gives rise to what we call controversies. And not at least because it touches the established order, the order between the powerful and the powerless, the haves and have-nots. And I think in this situation, this kind of problem, that asks for another approach. And then we propose what Vintovic call post-normal science, or what Gibbons and Novotny call Mode 2 science. And the most important elements of these approaches are what we can call transdisciplinarity, or multi-perspectivism, explorative thinking, engaged knowledge, and so on. So to conclude, we need a mix of different approaches, and the characteristics of each problem ask for another approach. And so it's clear that a transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, or monodisciplinary approach are very complementary to each other.
So this, of course, we heard is quite essential for sustainability research, that we need to take these different values, different interests, different norms also into consideration. And you just now mentioned also that interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research is therefore quite essential for fostering sustainability research. Can you go a little bit more into depth of these approaches and explain inter and transdisciplinary research?
Okay.
Thank you.
I think science for sustainability and definitely on wicked issues is an interesting process of knowledge construction, a kind of co-production where different disciplines are involved to arrive at a shared understanding of, in this case, sustainability issues. And we often see that a wicked issue is addressed by an instrumental approach. And then the problem is assumed to be divisible into different independent parts that can be solved in isolation from each other. And then the relations between the parts are then suppressed. So we close our eyes for them. And I think we must be aware that an interdisciplinary approach is not just put a staple through some papers on the same topic of different researchers. No, it's about thinking and developing together with researchers from different disciplines on a problem definition, analyzing together the issue, and search together for solutions. And of course, this is difficult. So we are not used to work that way. We all have different assumptions, different starting points, different theoretical, analytical frameworks. So so it's quite a tough job to create consensus on definitions, on aims, on pathways towards sustainability. And yeah, and definitely when we face different normative perspectives, uncertainties, discussion on facts, incomplete knowledge, and so on, you know, the wicked thing. But it becomes even more interesting when we jump from an interdisciplinary approach towards a so-called transdisciplinary approach. So when we also bring in the knowledge of non-academic actors like companies, NGOs, policymakers, and so on. And I can follow scholars very well who argue that transdisciplinary research is able and as such also necessary to develop socially robust knowledge on wicked issues. So, and to be clear, transdisciplinarity is not a new scientific discipline. And we must consider it as an interesting approach to tackle or to address wicked sustainability issues. And it's useful in a lot of scientific disciplines. So it's not a discipline in itself.
Thanks a lot. I forgot to mention before that actually people who watch us live, they also have the opportunity to post their questions in the YouTube channel. So any questions are very much welcome to be posted there. I think, Philip, you also have a question.
Okay, yes, I was thinking about this concept of leverage points. So if we could focus on that maybe a bit, like the leverage points within the higher education system, how could sustainability research become more important within our universities and colleges? Which concrete steps have you already taken and which have been successful? Can you share some good practices on that?
Okay, I think to answer this question, it's really important to mention the role of the think tank Transition Ugent. Since 2012, a group of we call frontrunners, consisting of people from the central administration of our university, professors, postdoc researchers, PhD researchers, students of our university, and so on. These frontrunners have initiated the bottom-up process to foster sustainability at Ghent University. So it's not a top-down strategy; it's really bottom-up. And I must say that this process has been strongly supported by the university's environmental coordinator and also by our own research center, the Center for Sustainable Development. So at the moment, Transition Ugent, so this think tank, engages over 250 academic students and people also from the university management. And this think tank, this open network of frontrunners, has produced two memorandums, one in 2013 and one in 2015, I think. So two reports for the top of our university with visions, with pathways, with actions on energy of our own university buildings, on food, in our own campus restaurants, on mobility, on waste, but of course also on the core business of our university, namely research and education. So for research and also for the others, we organized dozens of roundtable exercises between 2012 and 2014 on different fields of actions. So I said also on research. And for research, we started with the critical analysis of the current situation of our research system and what were the problems. I would check the report. The first was the compartmentalization of research. So researchers stay most of the time within their pillar, so they stay only in their research fields. Second one was the lack of student involvement in research. Of course, there are huge differences between educational programs. Also, there was a lack of cooperation between business and government. So it's again in general, because also we see difference between disciplines. And there was also a lack of focus on societal relevance. We see sometimes also exceptions, but then sometimes we see that innovation becomes a goal in itself, or is it framed within a search for economic growth. And of course, we see also the output-driven research culture. And then we see especially the problem concerning the publish or perish debate, so what we call the web of science religion. So that was the problem analysis, the system analysis. Then the next meetings, the next roundtable exercises focused on the vision we want, on relevant objectives for sustainability research. We did it also for the other teams. And our results for research were quite broad formulated. We want a focus on socio-ecological challenges within our research at our university. We also argue in favor of the use of societal relevance as a key criteria for research. For instance, for evaluation of proposals, PhDs, promotions, etc. And we also think that an inter- and transdisciplinary research must be considered as something mainstream. So not just as a niche or a side event. So we need a good balanced mix between monodisciplinary, multi and inter and transdisciplinary research. And of course, last one, it's also necessary to perform our research in a sustainable way. So don't fly every year to the other side of the world. And at the end, we had some round tables where we defined actions, transition pathways, and experiments to create a shift from the current situation towards the research model we really want. So the actions proposed by the Ghent University Transition Initiative, we focused on first a research call that maybe can provide incentives for transdisciplinary research on sustainability issues. For instance, we had a plea for financial means from our own university research fund to prepare, for instance, a Horizon 2020 initiative. So support to elaborate an inter- and transdisciplinary project proposal on wicked issue, for instance, on sustainability. So, but to be honest, at the moment, we didn't really manage to achieve success on that track. So we also plea for a reform of the what I already called the formal evaluation criteria. But it's also a hard thing to change because of a lot of lock-ins. So for instance, big research groups are not willing to change the established order. So the current win-win situation is quite positive for them, so they don't want to change. Another proposal focuses on the support for what we call broad inter- and transdisciplinary research platforms on sustainability issues. And I think the good thing here is that we were able to create a network on sustainability education, and more exactly on education in the face of wicked issues. It is a network funded by our own university, by an own university fund. So here we are a little bit on track. And not really funded by our own university, not in a direct way, but just because we want it. We are people from Transition Ghent. We started within the context of Transition Ghent, a kind of what we call a multi- and transdisciplinary platform on one theme, namely sustainable cities. And yeah, on that track, we are quite at the beginning, but it seems promising.
Okay, that's really interesting, as it clearly proves to me that there are multiple leverage points in the system, and we can fight on several points at the same time. Now, you have already been talking a bit about transdisciplinarity and the co-production of knowledge that is involved. Now, can you give a concrete example of such a transdisciplinary experiment that you have already initiated?
Okay, I just said we're quite at the beginning, but I think the platform on sustainable cities might be a good example here. Together with with a colleague from our research center, a professor also from the public administration, and a professor from the architecture and urban planning department. We started an experiment on this platform, I think at the end of 2015. And so then we brought together 20 academics from different disciplines, and also about 15 policymakers from the city of Ghent. And we tried to build a knowledge platform on wicked issues in the city of Ghent. And we believed, and we still do, that also our own city is able to function as a living lab for researchers. And just not only popular places like Barcelona or Copenhagen, also our own city is very relevant here. And the other way around, I think a university in the heart of the city can be considered as a real brain power. So why don't use this knowledge? So urban actors must use in a more effective way the academic expertise of Ghent University. And so that's why we thought that such a platform is a quite good idea. With this platform, we want to cross traditional boundaries at 3 levels. So first, within the university, as it crosses disciplinary boundaries, so that's the multidisciplinarity thing. But also, and as a second one, within the municipal authorities. So also a government, also an urban government, has his pillars, has his closed departments. And then the third one, the third traditional boundary, is the one between academics, on one hand, and urban actors like policymakers, companies, NGOs, on the other hand. So that's also a boundary, and for the freaks, they often call this the quadruple helix. So what did we do? After the first meeting, we visited once again the mayor and aldermen involved in this initiative. And it were those politicians that decided, or at least defined, the 2 complex topics where we could start with, namely food and housing. And the latter, so housing or living, is a more or less a classic, almost settled issue, but it's very hard. So how to deal with gentrification in the city of Ghent, how to strive towards climate neutrality in all neighborhoods, or how to combine both questions or challenges. So it's about tough questions, and policymakers were really interested to discuss the problem definitions with us, to discuss possible solutions, together with a group of professors and postdoc researchers from different disciplines. The other wicked issue is food. That seems more or less a new hype in city policies. Do we need an urban food strategy? Do we need food hubs to foster short chain initiatives? And what about our urban agriculture and so on? So on these 2 issues, we organized several academic workshops to learn from each other, to learn other assumptions from other disciplines, other theoretical perspectives, also from other disciplines, so other analytical frameworks, other methods, and so on. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting to learn from a sociologist about the relation between food and social background, or about the routines we use to buy our food, or to learn from a professor of medicine about health and food, or from a bioengineer about the life cycle of meat, and so on. So, as already mentioned, we are not used to act and behave in that kind of interdisciplinary setting, but it's really worthwhile. So I must admit some researchers dropped out, and then they quit the platform because they didn't see the added value. They didn't feel very comfortable in this setting. But I think they were not against it. They just say, call me if you need my expertise. And I don't think that is a problem. Not every researcher must engage himself in transdisciplinary initiatives. As mentioned already, we need both engaged researchers dealing with uncertainties in complex setting, as well as specialists who focus on one particular element of the problem. And yeah, maybe to conclude one more thing. Last month, there was a project call from the city of Ghent. It was on the upscaling of short chain initiatives, on the urban food strategy, or more specific on scenarios for food hubs in the city. And yeah, of course, the process we started within this new platform made it possible to write and to submit a really interesting proposal together with 8 or 10 professors and postdoc researchers from different disciplines. So that could be interesting. And by the end of the month, this month, I think the politicians will decide who will get the project. So fingers crossed for us. But this could be a real and interesting opportunity to experiment with a new research setting, and so a new multi and transdisciplinary setting for research.
And how would this feed back into the system of academic research? I mean, can such transdisciplinary experiments lead towards a system change of our research system?
Yeah. I think we need experiments to learn how to do research in another way, in a better way, especially when it concerns wicked issues. And I think, let me use the perspective of transition thinking to explain why even a small project is useful to make change happen. In a nutshell, I think we must show that there is an alternative, that there are alternatives, that there is another way when it becomes clear that the dominant way is not enough. So what is the transition approach? And I think, yes, it's a big field, but I am a fan of the multi-level perspective. That is a framework of Dutch professors Frank Heels and Johan Schot. And their analytical framework sees a system change as kind of a result of an interplay between different levels. And the 3 levels. So, and the first or highest level is the landscape level. So the landscape describes the big drivers, the overall societal trends, for instance, climate change, the famous wicked issue, or globalization or neoliberalism. And the landscape puts pressure on the levels below. And the second level is the regime. The regime, that's an important one. That describes the dominant state of the socio-technical system. For instance, that could be the energy system or food system, which consists in turn of several dimensions: technology, science, culture, policy, industry, markets, and so on. And the lowest level in this framework is the niche level. And niches are seen as innovative spaces and initiatives that can trigger changes at the regime. So, and that is also important. According to this multi-level perspective, the momentum or the windows of opportunity for transition grows under a combination of increasing landscape pressures, internal regime contradictions, and the development of promising niches. And I think this way of thinking is more or less transferable, or at least inspiring, to all strategy concerning sustainability research. Because more and more we are confronted with wicked sustainability issues. So that's the landscape level. And I also think that some internal contradictions pop up. For instance, societal relevant research has to deal with the web of science religion. Also, universities see more and more private companies where professors and researchers try to or must achieve lots of quota. And the third one is creativity also gets lost in continuous strive for more proposals, more publications. So I think the current regime needs a change as well. And then when you are able to show at that moment that there is an interesting, mature alternative of dealing with those wicked issues, then it is possible that our experiments are given more appreciation or more recognition. So it's a small step, a necessary step in a broader picture towards a system change. It's not a revolution, I know, And I think also that fits more or less within the idea of goal-oriented incrementalism. And that's also typical for transition thinking. So to conclude, and maybe I sound a little bit too skeptical, but I don't want to be naive or too naive. I said before, the current system is quite stable because of the lock-ins. And the established order wants to keep the dominant model in place. So I think that a change will only occur step by step, but that's why we need experiments like that.
Thanks a lot also for these impressions and observations also that you made. I'd like to jump in here with another question, thinking about, so we found that researchers are quite, that the system brings us into the force of somehow having lots of publications, and we need to, the funding is also quite disciplinary oriented rather than transdisciplinary or even interdisciplinary. It's hard to find funding opportunities and so, and then you also find that inter and transdisciplinary research even takes more time, yeah, and this greater effort, which, as you showed, also some researchers say, okay, call me if you need me, but I get out for the moment, and so. Mm-hmm. Do you think like new communication technologies also probably are an opportunity to build closer connections between university and society? Do you have you made some experiences with that already as kind of communication platforms, the use of information and communication technologies to build also a bridge between university and community? It's just
to foster cooperations between universities on sustainability thinking.
Excuse me? Sorry?
Is your question what is the role of communication to foster sustainability thinking between universities? Is that your question? Or?
Yeah, exactly. What forms of communication you found out are most suitable actually between to support communication between university researchers and actors from society, stakeholders, and so.
No, I don't think I get the point here. So it's about new platforms using the quadruple helix thinking.
If this is one aspect, yeah, that might be one example, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we try to learn from each other, from our different perspectives we have, but that's the project we try to install with our platform, or the idea with our platform. So we're just at the beginning, as said before, but I think it's a good way of dealing with that. Just take one example out of it and try to work together on a concrete topic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we often think that initiatives like the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, are also able to bring people together, but then you will discuss it in a quite broad way, and that's something else than tackle a concrete issue. So I'm really in favor to work together on a concrete issue. Yeah.
Mm. And do you think that then also raises the interest of the people and motivates them to engage also in the research activities? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let me see if there is another question, not so long. Then another question I would have there is, so young research that come in actually, do you have any recommendations for young researchers in fostering sustainability research?
Yeah, I once wrote a chapter a few years ago together with my colleague Gert Hoeminen, and at the end of this chapter we put forward some recommendations. It were 3 recommendations for sustainability researchers, not only for young researchers, but also for maybe older researchers. And the first one is, or at least looks, quite simple. It's be modest. Be modest on your research results. And so do not pretend that the knowledge you acquired is the overall truth. What you discovered in a lab setting is not always transferable to real life situations. And so we often hear these are the facts, but what does that mean? I think we have to be aware that we can only use these facts in the proper scale or against an appropriate background. So I think here I follow Bruno Latour and other science sociologists as well, and they say, please do not spread out a lab truth all over the world as a kind of overall truth. And maybe we should add here another thing as well. So sustainability researchers are often confronted with the critique, yeah, you are too engaged, please be more neutral, please. But what does that mean? What is neutral science? Is that the dominant way how we do research or how we tackle problems? I think this dominant way, this science regime, to use the words from transition thinkers, is also full of normative points of view and also normative frameworks. But because it is the mainstream, I think the normative character seems gone. And I know this is a quite difficult section. Epistemology is related to an interesting but complex research layer or research element, but it's very important to understand the relativity of truth. And maybe to end this first suggestion, I will quote maybe Sheila Jesanoff. It's one of the main thinkers in the field of science and technology, and she says, and this quote is more food for thought. She says that the way in which we know and represent the world, so both nature and society, are inseparable from the way in which we choose to live in it. So be modest, please. That's the first one. But I hope that this suggestion will not cause a kind of paralysis. And therefore, the second suggestion is be immodest modest. So, sounds a little bit strange, but that means that I hope that researchers will take responsibility for sustainability challenges and that they don't use a weak interpretation of sustainability. And so that's the immodest element. Please use a transformative or reform approach. Be an engaged researcher. And to be clear, and that's something on academic freedom. I think academic freedom is very important, but we have to be aware that the combination of engaged knowledge and top scientific research is possible, so they do not exclude each other. So don't forget the first suggestion as well, so be reflective while you are an engaged researcher, of course. And my third suggestion is, try to experiment a bit. Put sometimes the dominant and therefore easy research model between brackets. So go for a balanced mix, what Gibbons and Vodny call a mode 1 approach and a mode 2 approach. And the mode 2 approach, the new one, is the more sustainable one, at least for wicked issues. And I think the last one, so the mode 2 approach is really underdeveloped within university. And so try to cope with or to acknowledge uncertainties and not only clear-cut facts. Also bring in long-term thinking. For instance, try to think in an explorative way and not only in a predictive manner. Another thing is confronted with wicked issues. So once again, try to create an inter or a transdisciplinary setting. That's not easy, but yeah, dare to fail and learn from that failure and reflect on that. And a fourth one is maybe involve users of your research, and why not use them also to review your research results. At the moment, it seems that only peers are able to review our papers. And so the Web of Science religion put that between brackets, the rat race for peer-reviewed journal articles. So these are important elements, and I hope this will help young researchers in their struggle with sustainability issues, and definitely when they are confronted with issues, so with no right answer, but with a lot of different stakes, with different interpretations, with different norms and values, with different uncertainties, and so on. So these are more or less some recommendations for sustainability researchers.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. On this, just some live questions came also in. One was about if you found opportunities how to involve students actually into your transdisciplinary research, or if you find opportunities for involvement of students and the potentials behind the involvement of students. And another question was, but maybe after, about professional training for transdisciplinary research methods. So if you at your university offer some professional training for other researchers in these methodologies as well, because in sustainability research we find new complex environments, so also new and different kinds of methodologies are needed. So those two questions came up from the audience.
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's really important to involve students not only in educational programs but also in research. And I think when students ask for more involvement, I think our university, and certainly the top of our university, is very sensitive to what students want. So if they plea for another approach, they seem. It looks more easier for them to open doors than for researchers or professors like me. When students want something and they are the top of the university is very sensitive for their needs, and I think we should involve them in building up our strategies to implement sustainability strategies. So that's one first element. And as I told it already, but there are huge differences between educational programs to involve students in research. At my department, political sciences, there is a huge gap between educational programs of researchers and professors and the research of those professors. But I hear in other departments, for instance, engineers, they work together. The master thesis of students are just an element of the broader research project of a professor. So it really depends between departments within our university. But yeah, there is a lot of potential, I think, to work on it. So the second question was on the different methods on.
Yeah, exactly. So in sustainability research, different methodologies. Necessarily for sustainability research, we face complex problems. We have a back loop here. So if you have some kind of professional training within your university where there are maybe method center where researchers can go to learn about transdisciplinary center methods, or if you have working groups on transdisciplinary research or any kind of this.
Yeah, I think within our university there is, I mean, funded or organized by our own university, there is nothing like that. And that's different for education on sustainability, non-wicked issues. There is a platform at the moment, and we call it an international thematic network, where we can start discussions and learn from each other and start experiments together on how to deal with wicked issues and sustainability within our educational programs. But at the Flemish level, at the Eco Campus, and then I think Philippe can answer the question more easily than me. There is a whole trajectory on a whole process on sustainability research, and different researchers and professors from different universities in the Flanders are already involved in that. So I think that's the only thing I know where we can learn from each other on sustainability research. Or am I wrong, Philip?
Philip, please, microphone.
Yeah, not at all. No, that's exactly right. And there's an echo somewhere on the signal. Okay, now it's better. I've just very briefly introduced EcoCampus, and we not only work on research. Obviously, we've always been much more focused on education and the role of teachers and professors. So we do focus this. Do focus on this professionalization, as we call it. So the quality of teaching and improving that within the framework of sustainability. So that is definitely one very important aspect of the EcoCampus work. Absolutely. And just to make a quick connection to the world of research, it's also something that we try to introduce into doctoral schools. And I think it's important that young researchers, whilst doing their first research, mostly their PhD research, will get to know and still be trained and build a capacity in this sustainability and the sustainability research. So that's where the importance or the relevance of doctoral schools comes in.
Yeah. So when thinking about professional training at university, we can make a division between initiatives on disciplines themselves. So I think a lot of disciplines should engage themselves with sustainability challenges. I said we need expert knowledge, and I think that seems more or less okay. But at the same time, we need academic institutions, kind of umbrella institutions, who focus on the contested concept sustainability itself, so on the wickedness, and those institutions are able to bring researchers and non-academic actors together to discuss in a transdisciplinary way the problem definitions again and search together for possible solutions. And I think all research centers, so the Center for Sustainable Development, we are quite good at that aspect. So we, not on all, we are not technology experts, but we try to tackle sustainability questions as political issues. So as socio-technical problems, socio-technical, so we need both, where a lot of different interpretations and stakes and so on are at the forefront. So yeah, we need debates and discussion. Yeah, there's a struggle between discourses and strategy, and that's why it's political. And yeah, it could be interesting to have more discussions on research, not only within that platform, but within our university. And yeah, so we need both of them. I think we need technology experts in a search towards a more sustainable future, and at the same time, I think the research and expertise of centers like our own is also very useful and necessary. So.
You already mentioned just that it needs also kind of political actions or background for transdisciplinary research, to foster transdisciplinary research. Can you name some examples of how actually at probably different levels at national or also institutional level policy can influence and support transdisciplinary research and sustainability research?
You mean where we have to begin the struggle, or what do you?
Yeah, where you find struggles at the moment. I mean, I see it very strongly at national or also international level. I've the experience that we find difficulties to have transdisciplinary funding opportunities, actually. Mm-hmm. And then also in publication policies and opportunities, they are very much disciplinary oriented as well. Whereas at institutional level, maybe could you find or experience different opportunities where the university itself kind of supports transdisciplinary research by policies per se, or by boards for exchange, or I don't know,
Yeah, I think the funding of our own university, that's quite classical. There is not much room for transdisciplinary research, I think, and that's not easy to make a change there. I think at the Flemish level, there is, or certainly there was, an interesting program. It's called SBO, Strategic Research, and I think there were interesting elements that fits quite well with the transdisciplinary approach. Now there was a reorganization, so I really don't know what will happen with that program, with that research program. But I do believe that at European level, yeah, there are often some cracks in the system that looks like there is an opportunity to make transdisciplinary more at the forefront as an interesting way of dealing with research questions. Yeah, it depends, but I think the dominant way of doing research is really the classical way. So it's quite hard. So maybe I explained a few questions ago the transition thinking, so the multi-level perspective. So I hope there will be a pressure from some groups, from some landscape elements. I hope not with disasters, that we were forced to work in a transdisciplinary way, because we have to acknowledge that these are wicked issues, and just divide them in separate independent parts and just deal with one element of it, that will be not enough. Then we will miss the interrelations between all aspects, and yeah, and because there is not a right answer, we need to do it in a transdisciplinary way. So yeah, it's necessary, but there are not a lot of opportunities at the moment.
Yeah, thanks. I think Philip, you have another question?
All right. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think we should probably close more or less, since we have just a few minutes left. But I think this has been a tremendously useful webinar for sustainability scholars and researchers, but also for education policymakers. And I hope it'll reach a big audience. So thank you so much, Thomas Blok from the Center for Sustainable Development at Ghent University in Belgium, for sharing your views and experience. And best of luck with your ongoing and upcoming research and experiments. Thanks again to Clemens Mader and Copernicus Alliance for cooperating with EcoCampus Belgium on this webinar. And thanks to the audience for watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, too, all together.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you again. Bye-bye.